The city library. In a corner long forgotten by time, where dust blanketed every surface like ancient snow, a young man was quietly searching for something. Nothing. Still nothing. He mumbled under his breath, sounding a little disappointed. With a sigh, he closed the book in his hands. Shh! A sharp sting pricked his finger. A thin cut stretched across his skin, and blood began to beat at the surface. It happened again, huh? He let out a dry chuckle. He had been careful, really, he had, but somehow a single page had still managed to wound him. Then again, he was used to it by now. Injuries like this were practically part of his daily routine. His name was Tran Fong. He was 22 years old, and from the very moment he was born, misfortune had clung to him like a curse. When he was just 1 year old, he nearly choked to death while nursing. At 3, his mother passed away. At 5, his father followed. When he turned 10, the orphanage he was staying at was shut down, and he was moved again, and again, and again. By the time he reached adulthood, he had lived in 13 different orphanages, each of which, for some inexplicable reason, ended up shutting down not long after he arrived. And that was just the start of it. Anytime he stepped outside, disaster was sure to follow. According to his own incomplete statistics, he had been yelled at by angry grannies 85 times, involved in 36 traffic accidents, burgled 76 times, fallen into manholes 10 times, and chased by dogs 15 times. Honestly, the fact that he was still alive could be considered a miracle. Compared to all that, today's paper cut was nothing. His reason for coming here today? To search for something known as the Lucky Artifact, a legendary item that supposedly brings good fortune. He didn't want to believe in such things, but after everything he'd been through, how could he not? There had to be something, anything, that explained why his life was the way it was. Since learning how to read, he dived into books, mythology, folklore, superstition, anything that mentioned objects tied to luck. He tried them all. Fortune jade, koi charms, four-leaf clovers, every single one was useless. Nothing could rid him of his cursed luck. Then one day, he stumbled across some old notes left behind by his father, a lifelong archaeologist who, after decades of digging, never found anything worth much, except perhaps the mystery that cost him his life. Those notes spoke of a mythical object, the Stone of Fate, an artifact said to control one's destiny. The information was vague, but ever since that day, Tran Fong had chased every lead, visited every strange and obscure place he could find. Still, he had never seen anything that fit the description. Did it even exist? He couldn't say for sure. His wish wasn't big. He didn't want riches. He didn't want power. He just wanted to live like a normal person. But even that seemed too much to ask. A normal life? Don't make him laugh. Just surviving was a daily ordeal. Every time he left his apartment, he had to stay on high alert. One moment of carelessness, and he could end up crushed by a runaway truck. The world, to him, was a battlefield. Where the hell is the Stone of Fate? He sighed. From his backpack, he pulled out a small bottle of disinfectant and tended to his finger with practiced ease. Then, with a roll of gauze, he wrapped it up neatly. Naturally, his bag contained a first aid kit. After all, for someone who got hurt as often as he did, it was just part of his daily essentials. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. The library would be closing soon. As he stood up to leave, slip, his foot lost traction. Wham! He stumbled and crashed into a nearby bookshelf. A cascade of ancient books tumbled down from above. "Are you freaking kidding me?" Tran Fong muttered as he sat up, rubbing his head. Yup, as expected, nothing ever went smoothly. Looking down, he saw the culprit. A puddle of water had formed on the floor. When he looked up, he noticed the ceiling was leaking. Apparently, this part of the building hadn't been maintained in years. Of course, why wouldn't it be leaking? He gave a bitter smile. Just another day of bad luck. His whole body ached, but just as he was about to get up and leave, something caught his eye. Among the pile of fallen books, one had landed open, face up. The title read, Fate. Huh? He blinked, curiosity piqued. A book about fortune? He picked it up and flipped through the pages. Inside, it was filled with all sorts of strange and obscure theories, everything from astrology to cosmic energy and zodiac signs galore. Most of it looked like the kind of cheap nonsense you'd find in a $5 fortune magazine. Figures. Just my luck. He chuckled dryly, then froze, because on the very next page he saw it. The Stone of Fate. His breath caught in his throat. No matter where this book had copied its information from, it didn't matter. What mattered was that this was the most detailed description of the Stone of Fate he had ever seen. Stone of Fate. A mythical artifact said to control destiny itself. According to ancient legend, there exists a force beyond comprehension, a force greater than any known law of nature. It cannot be seen or touched, and yet it influences everything. No one knows what it truly is, only that it may be tied to the concept of luck. And the one artifact said to command this force is the Stone of Fate. It's real. Tranfong's mouth went dry. His hands trembled as he flipped to the next page, and there, printed in ink, was an illustration. It was the first time he'd ever seen the true form of the Stone of Fate. It looked just like a coin with strange symbols carved into its surface. This is the Stone of Fate? His voice was shaking, but not because of how the object looked. He reached under his shirt with trembling fingers and pulled out a pendant. It was identical, the same coin-sized object, the same strange markings. The thing my dad gave me, the only thing he left behind after he died. That's the Stone of Fate? He couldn't believe it. Then again, maybe he did believe it. He just didn't want to. But if this thing really was the Stone of Fate, then why? Have I been so damn unlucky all my life? Could it be fake? A replica? Something his dad made as a joke? Or was there something more to the Stone of Fate than he ever imagined? Tranfong forced himself to suppress the sudden trembling in his heart and continued reading the page. According to legend, the Stone of Fate holds unimaginable power. However, using it is not easy. Before it can be fully awakened, it continuously absorbs the ambient fortune surrounding it. Only when it has gathered enough will its power truly manifest. Therefore, for those who cannot provide enough fortune to activate it, its presence may become their greatest nightmare. Shit! Tranfong couldn't help but curse under his breath. Absorb surrounding luck? A cold chill ran down his spine. In that instant, everything made sense. His entire life plagued by bad luck, the endless misfortunes, it was this damn stone. The Stone of Fate, unearthed from an ancient tomb by his father, had been sucking away his fortune all these years? This damn thing. Almost on instinct, Tranfong reached to tear it off his neck. But no matter how hard he tugged, it wouldn't budge. Can't be removed by normal means. Forcing himself to calm down, he looked back at the book. Once worn, the Stone of Fate cannot be removed through conventional means. Only after activation can its power be controlled. If you accidentally put it on, then your only option is to activate it. The following page contains the activation method. Flipping to the next page, Tranfong's brows furrowed. Blood? Draw a formation with my own blood, then place the stone in the center? That's it? Sounds too simple. He narrowed his eyes. Something felt off, but the temptation to get rid of this cursed misfortune was far too great. A normal life, no more bad luck, no more waking up to things going horribly wrong every single day. It was a dream he had long since given up on. Screw it. I'll try. He ripped off the bandage on his finger. Blood trickled from the wound, and he carefully traced the bizarre symbols onto the wooden floor. His expression grew unusually serious, more focused than he'd ever been. Slowly, he placed the Stone of Fate into the center of the bloody array. Buzz, a strange light pulsed through the formation. Tranfong's spirit jolted violently. It worked. The blood-ruined array ignited in a crimson glow, and the Stone of Fate flared to life, radiating golden light. His heart soared. Finally! But just as he was about to celebrate, a line of glowing text appeared inside the array. Upon activation, the Stone of Fate will absorb the bearer's remaining fortune to initiate its core awakening protocol. Wait, what? Trenfang's face turned pale. It absorbs my luck during activation? The book never mentioned this. If the damn thing took 20 years of his life and still hadn't activated, then what the hell was going to happen when it absorbed everything at once? Run? Without another thought, Trenfang turned and dashed toward the door. But then, boom, boom, the entire library began to quake violently. An earthquake? Now? Before he could reach the exit, a deafening crash echoed above him. Stones came tumbling from the ceiling, and in the blink of an eye, his world went black. His final memory was of the golden glow from the Stone of Fate, shining brightly against the darkness. Later that night, on a random news broadcast, at approximately 6 p.m. today, a minor earthquake occurred in the downtown area, resulting in the collapse of the city library. One fatality has been reported. Authorities are currently investigating the incident, but preliminary reports suggest the building's age and poor maintenance may have contributed. Darkness. Trenfang's consciousness floated in a void. Time passed. How much? He couldn't tell. Eventually, his awareness began to return. Slowly, his eyes opened. A vague, blurry world came into focus. Still, dark. The air smelled strange, sharp, like metal and rot. Where am I? Confused, Trenfang looked around. Shadows stretched across every corner. The dim light flickering from the bracelet on his wrist was the only thing letting him see at all. It was a cave. He was underground. Farther ahead was nothing but pitch black. Wait, didn't I die back there? He blinked, then looked down at his wrist. The bracelet shimmered faintly. Then, memories surged into his mind, memories that weren't his. His heart skipped a beat. I transmigrated? He'd read enough stories to recognize the signs. That golden light, the Stone of Fate, must have triggered something. It drained his luck, triggered an earthquake, nearly killed him, and then saved him by flinging him into another world? A miracle? Or another twist of cruel fate? But more importantly, I'm alive! Trenfang nearly laughed out loud. The cursed misfortune that had haunted him for 22 years was finally gone. But his joy didn't last long. What the hell is this place? He paused, letting the flood of inherited memories settle. This world was different. It looked like Earth, but it wasn't. After a revolutionary breakthrough in genetic research, this world had entered the genetic era. Humanity not only unlocked their innate potential, but learned to fuse their genes with those of mutated creatures, granting them supernatural abilities. Some used these powers for civilian professions. Others became warriors, gene fighters, with strength capable of turning the tide of wars. The world had changed. Humanity, driven by diminishing resources on Earth, had set its eyes on the stars and found this massive planet. It had its own sun, its own moon, and a striking resemblance to Earth. Except for one thing. It was massive. The landmass alone was more than 10,000 times greater than Earth's. Resources were everywhere, and yet, even now, only 18% of the surface had been explored. Despite their advancements, there were still places no human dared to go, like the frozen north, where time itself was said to stop, or the Flame Sky volcano, where an ancient beast was rumored to sleep, one that once drained an entire river in a single gulp. This was a world of danger, of power, of endless potential, and Trenfang had just arrived. Dangerous places like this existed all across the world. This wasn't just a world of peril, it was a world of wonders. Trenfang's eyes sparkled. This place is even more amazing than I ever imagined. And what's more, this was only the beginning. According to the original host's memories, this miraculous gene era had spawned countless scientific marvels. Some people fused with more and more gene types, gaining terrifying combat capabilities. Others, through continuous fusion, awakened rare and mystical gene abilities. Take, for example, the most powerful tech corporation in the world, Stormtech. Its founder, Nguyen, possessed one such ability. His power? Digitization. Those with this ability could release a mysterious energy to analyze the genetic and spiritual status of themselves and others. At first, because it wasn't a combat-type gene, Nguyen was mocked, dismissed by everyone. But through years of tireless experimentation, Lingwine unraveled the hidden potential within his power. He extracted that strange energy and forged it into a wristband device. And from there, created a legend. By simply activating the wristband, anyone could instantly check their current status. Since then, this world wasn't just the gene era. It had entered the data era. Is it really that amazing? Curious, Chunfeng lifted his right hand and gently tapped his left wrist. Suddenly, the sleek black wristband trembled slightly. A strange energy surged through his body before returning to the band. A glowing interface flickered into existence, revealing a string of information. Basic attributes: Strength 10, Agility 10, Physique 10, Spirit 30. Current status: Stamina 10-10, Mental Energy 30-30. Gene abilities: Windblade, dance within the raging wind. Condense a formation using mental energy to release a wind blade that deals damage. Small chance 5% to trigger a mutation and unleash continuous wind blades. Common skills: Basic melee combat, can deal a certain amount of physical damage, derived from muscle memory and mental recollection, analyzed and calculated via the wristband's internal chip. Unique ability: Luck Aura, consumes stored luck value from the Stone of Fate to temporarily boost overall fortune. Remaining luck, 10 points. The Stone of Fate absorbs energy from the world to generate luck. Estimated regeneration, 1 point per hour, was the final ability. This is me, fully digitized. These base stats use the raw human body as a unit of measurement, making each person's state clearly visible. But the part that really caught Chunfeng's attention was the final ability. Luck Aura? He blinked, surprised. So the Stone of Fate hadn't disappeared? It had, fused with him? Seeing only 10 luck points remaining, he quickly pieced it together. Back when the library collapsed, the moment I was about to die, the Stone of Fate must have unleashed all the luck it had gathered over the years and brought me here. So that's the power of the Stone of Fate, huh? He whispered to himself. Fate was a double-edged sword. He had survived the unluckiest life imaginable. So maybe, in this new world, he could finally carve out a future worth living. But why the hell am I in a cave? Let's check this out. Skimming through the cluttered fragments of the original host's memories, Chunfeng searched for answers, and soon stumbled upon a story that made his chest tighten. His name was Chunfeng, a native of Kim City, an orphan. His parents died when he was young, but he excelled in his studies. With scholarships, he fought his way into a top high school, majoring in gene theory. He mastered the basics of gene abilities and combat, entered the elite class, and became the kind of kid parents talked about with pride. If nothing had gone wrong, he would have become a classic example of the poor kid makes good success story. But reality is rarely that kind. On the day of the university entrance exam, when he should have been on campus taking the test, someone threw him into the ocean as bait for sharks. As for why, the original host probably never figured it out. But Chunfeng, after skimming through those memories, had a pretty good guess. The most prestigious university in the world, Qingbei Gene University, offered only one slot in Kim City for its gene crafting program. And the original Chunfeng? He was a bookworm. That exact program had been his goal for years, which meant he stood in someone's way. Poor guy. Chunfeng gave the former owner of his body a moment of silent respect. The kid had spent his life working part-time and studying. His social skills were almost non-existent, making him an easy target. If I had arrived just a little sooner, he muttered, he wouldn't have had to suffer like that. But something still felt off. Bookworm? Okay, sure. Thrown into the ocean? Wait a second. Sharks? And then it clicked. Boom! The cave suddenly trembled. The ground beneath his feet shook, the walls began to shift, and strange viscous fluids dripped down from the ceiling. Chunfeng's expression instantly changed. Oh shit! A chill ran down his spine. He remembered something from earlier. Images and data the wristband had shown right before the original host's death. A mutated black sea shark, a spirit-type variant beast. It had swallowed the original Trunfang whole, destroying his soul and consciousness, leaving behind only a shell. That's why I was able to transmigrate into this body. Which meant, this wasn't a cave at all. I'm inside the damn shark! Boom! Boom! The entire structure shook violently. Trunfang pressed himself hard against the wall. Boom! That deep, thunderous roar echoed again. It's waking up. The mutated Black Sea shark seemed to have awakened. Inside its body, Trunfang felt like the entire world was being turned upside down. That strange, viscous fluid was seeping out endlessly. He had just thrown a shirt into the puddle of slime to test it, and it had instantly dissolved. Now, that very same fluid was seeping through the cracks around him, flowing toward him like a creeping tide. This won't do. Trunfang took a deep breath. He didn't know exactly where he was, but judging by his surroundings, he was likely inside the stomach of the shark. There were no exits, and the only way in, the esophagus, was completely blocked by layers of slime. Trying to force his way through there, a one-way ticket to death. What should I do? Trunfang forced himself to stay calm. There was no way out. The entrance was sealed. He had only one option, breakthrough by force. In this era of genetic evolution, Gen warriors were overwhelmingly powerful. A single unit of strength was equivalent to that of an average unmodified human. And Trunfang? He had 10 units each of strength and agility, 10 times the physical ability of a regular person. Maybe, boom! Trunfang struck with all his might. Tss, he gasped sharply. Pain surged through his fist, but the stomach wall where he'd punched didn't even flinch. Yeah, sure, Trunfang's stats were high by normal standards, but in this world, this era of gene tech, mutated beasts like this had physical resistance that defied common sense. This isn't going to work. Trunfang turned his eyes to the data display projected from his wristband and focused on a skill, Windblade. Gene abilities. The mark of a true Gen warrior. Only those who possessed gene abilities could be recognized as proper warriors. And among them, spirit-type Gen warriors were without doubt the strongest. Naturally, such abilities came at a high price. The body's original owner had used up his entire scholarship just to afford a dirt-cheap entry-level gene serum to acquire this humble spirit-type skill. Windblade, compared to other spirit-type skills, it was pathetically weak. But right now, it was all Trunfang had. Well, with 30 points of spirit, maybe I can squeeze out some decent firepower. Trunfang drew a deep breath. Windblade! A surge of mysterious energy burst from within him, condensing midair into a shimmering arc of deep blue light. It shot forward like a crescent blade. Psh! A soft sound echoed. The Windblade vanished, leaving behind a shallow, blood-red wound on the stomach wall. An ear-splitting roar exploded from all directions. The stomach churned violently. Trunfang barely managed to avoid being splattered by jets of acidic slime shooting in every direction. This is bad. He stared at the wound. His strongest attack had barely left a scratch. There was no way he could take down this monstrous black sea shark from the inside. Not with that kind of firepower. This wasn't a fair fight. This was like a rabbit trying to bite through a tank. Even worse, he was already inside the thing. He was in the shark's weakest point. Damn it. Was he really going to die just moments after reincarnating? Trunfang glanced again at his stat panel. He still had 10 points of luck left. But could even luck help him get out of this alive? In the face of overwhelming power, sometimes even luck. Wait, he suddenly froze. His eyes flicked between the skill descriptions. He reread the details of Windblade. Then he paused at the final line. Has a very small chance to 5% to trigger a mutation that allows continuous casting. Continuous casting? 5% chance? He'd brushed past that part earlier, because 5% was laughably low. That meant only a 0.25% chance to trigger 3 consecutive blasts. As for 4 or more, practically zero. That's why the original owner had been dismissed as a loser after fusing this gene. But what if he combined it with Lucky Aura? Trenfang's thoughts raced. He still had 10 points of luck, enough to activate the aura for a short time. And during that time, what if Windblade could go berserk? His heart pounded with anticipation. Golden Coast City, Sand Bay. The sea breeze was gentle, the air fresh and invigorating. 5 brawny men rolled up their sleeves, preparing their gear. Each held a sharp weapon, glinting coldly under the sunlight. All set? A middle-aged man approached, his face stern. "Don't worry, Boss Mac," the men chuckled. "Cut the jokes," McLoy snapped. "This mission's no joke. We're hunting a mutated Black Sea shark, the undisputed king of these waters. It's insanely strong. The weapons you're holding, they won't even scratch it. The only real damage will come from your gene abilities." "That's strong, huh?" The men's expressions turned serious. "If it wasn't, you think I'd call you guys in?" McLoy forced a bitter smile. Last time, an entire squad of Gen warriors tried to take it down. Every single one died. No survivors. If my father weren't in critical condition, and if we didn't need the shark's liver for the treatment, I wouldn't be here either. Understood? The men exchanged glances, their playful demeanor gone. Good, McLoy exhaled. Stay sharp. If things go south, retreat immediately. Let's hope this mission goes smoothly. McLoy sprinkled several drops of shark attractant into the sea. This scent is irresistible to the Black Sea shark. It'll come soon. Prepare for battle. Got it? The air tensed. Everyone's eyes locked onto the calm ocean. Splash! The surface trembled. A glimmer of deep blue light surged upward. It's here! McLoy shouted. Attack! Swoosh! 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 Sharp weapons slashed at the shark's body, but they bounced off, completely ineffective. Not even a scratch. Let me handle this. A burly man clenched his right fist, as strange purple-black patterns crawled across his arm like living veins, condensing into an overwhelming force that radiated dread. With a power stat reaching 60, once amplified by his gene ability, he could unleash might beyond the ordinary limit. Chillin' fist. The man soared into the sky and slammed his fist down hard onto the body of the mutant Black Sea shark. In an instant, an explosion of force blasted out. Let me handle this. A burly man clenched his right fist as strange purple-black patterns crawled across his arm like living veins, condensing into an overwhelming force that radiated dread. With a power stat reaching 60, once amplified by his gene ability, he could unleash might beyond the ordinary limit. Chillin' fist! The man soared into the sky and slammed his fist down hard onto the body of the mutant Black Sea shark. In an instant, an explosion of force blasted outward, sweeping the area and lifting a towering wave, at least 5 meters high. The mutated Black Sea shark let out an enraged roar. A strange ripple of mental energy surged outward. Urgh! Before the man could even fall back to the ground, blood had already gushed from his mouth. Damn it! A mental attack? This thing's brain has evolved that far already? Marshal Lai's expression changed drastically. Without hesitation, he barked out a command. Retreat! Get old third out of there now! Understood. Another burly man activated a thin shield of light, his figure flickering as he dashed forward, grabbing the unconscious old third who'd been knocked out by the shark and swiftly retreated. Shit! Marshal Lai clenched both fists, his eyes locked onto the head of the beast. They hadn't even begun their hunt, and it had already ended in failure. The moment the mental attack hit, he knew this Black Sea shark had evolved to a level far beyond what they could handle. Boss Lai. The men around him lowered their heads in shame. Don't blame yourselves. Marshal Lai's voice was heavy, his gaze dark. This beast, it's no longer something regular hunters like us can take down, unless a true powerhouse arrives. Just then, a sharp, ear-splitting shriek rang through the skies. What the hell is that? The team turned to the sea and froze. The black sea shark that had been dominating them only moments ago was now writhing madly on the surface of the ocean, its massive body thrashing as tidal waves surged around it. What's happening? Just as confusion gripped them, something even more shocking occurred. Wounds. Bloody gashes started appearing all over the shark's body. That thick, impenetrable skin, something they couldn't damage no matter what they tried, was now being ripped apart before their eyes. The sea turned red. Then a glowing, deep aqua blade of wind shot out from within the shark's body. Everyone instinctively took a step back. Before they could even process what was happening, more and more blades of azure wind burst forth from the creature's body, gleaming brilliantly beneath the sun, each one sharp, blinding, and relentless. What is that? Everyone stood frozen, mesmerized by the surreal scene. Suddenly, thunder cracked across the surface of the sea. A massive boom echoed. And then, from within the body of the black sea shark, a lone figure exploded out like a missile, landing firmly on the sandy shores of Sabe. Behind him, blood sprayed like a mist. The once mighty black sea shark flipped over, belly up, and fell into a deathly silence. No one spoke. Everyone stared. The one who had slain this terrifying beast was a young man, barely past 20, his face still carrying traces of youthful innocence. "I'm out." Trenfong laughed joyfully as he soaked in the sunlight, taking a deep breath of fresh air. He was alive. Actually alive. A quick glance at his wristband confirmed it. His luck points had been completely depleted, 0. In that final moment, he'd activated both Windblade and Lucky Aura simultaneously. The gene ability that everyone mocked as trash tier had unleashed a flurry of attacks that left even himself in awe. A storm of wind blades, slashing wildly in every direction. Under Lucky Aura's effect, he could unleash 10 wind blades per second, each costing only 1 luck point. In theory, if he had enough luck, he could keep firing until the end of time. Well, the damage output was kinda weak. Still, not bad for trash tier powers. Guess it's time to go home. Trenfong stretched, bones cracking, and finally turned toward the group staring at him. "Something on your mind?" he asked casually. And no, not at all. Marshall Lay stumbled over his words. This was a real powerhouse, so young, yet wielding such terrifying strength. This wasn't just natural talent, there was definitely a powerful force backing him. Actually, yes. Marshall Lay nervously stepped forward. "Esteemed senior, would you be willing to sell us the liver of the black sea shark?" "That shark?" Trenfong glanced back at the corpse floating on the sea, then shrugged. "Take the whole thing." "Thank you, senior." Marshall Lay was practically in tears. This might save Father's life. He quickly tapped his wristband, transferring 500,000 credits to Trenfong. Trenfong's eyes flickered in surprise. He wasn't super familiar with this world's currency yet, but even he could tell that was a big number. His first day after transmigrating, and he'd already scored a small fortune. Not bad. Though honestly, if given the choice, he would have preferred not to be eaten by a mutant shark in the first place. "Thank you again, senior." Marshall Lay bowed deeply. Trenfong gave a small smile and turned to leave. "We really got lucky this time." Lay sighed in relief. To run into a powerhouse already battling the black sea shark, and one who doesn't care about the money. If not for that. Are high school students these days all this strong? Old Third had woken up and gave a wry chuckle. "That's the edge of studying at TSO?" Lay looked toward the horizon, his tone emotional. From high school, they already start learning gene theory. Schools give them all kinds of resources. Their growth speed's twice ours at the same level. And after college entrance exams, they just rocket ahead even faster. "In the future, my son must go to school," one burly man declared, pounding his fist. "Naturally," Makloy nodded. Though even students with solid foundations usually aren't this powerful, that youth just now, he must be a top university student. The group sighed in awe. But what they didn't know was that the so-called university student had just flunked his college entrance exam. Golden City. in the heart of the city, within a small rental apartment. The moment Chunfeng returned home, his risk communicator was already flooded with messages. Because he had missed the final day of the aptitude tests, his previously outstanding scores had plummeted to the very bottom. The result? He'd failed to qualify for university, completely out of the running. "They sure post results fast here," Chunfeng muttered, shaking his head. "University? So I didn't make it. What now?" From the fragments of the original owner's memories, Chunfeng understood one thing very clearly. This world draws a hard line between those who attend high school and university and those who don't. High school builds your foundation. University skyrockets your progress. That's the cultivation rhythm of this world. No high school, failed the college exam, then accept your fate, fuse with a labor-type genetic ability, and get to work. This was a world where everyone could fuse with mutant genes. But there were two major types of gene powers, those suitable for labor and those meant for real combat. There was no question, combat genes were vastly superior, and every aspiring cultivator's dream. Combat genes, huh? Chunfeng narrowed his eyes. This was a world of survival of the fittest. Someone had silently tossed him into the ocean, and no one even noticed. That fact alone said enough about the danger of this world. Without power, you were nothing more than a walking corpse. If he wanted to live well, no, to live at all, he had to become a true powerhouse. But now he had failed the college exam. That complicated things. Is there another way? Suddenly, Chunfeng remembered the original owner's goal, to become a gene crafter. Gene warriors could fuse with a new type of gene at every stage. For instance, once one's strength reached a certain threshold, they could fuse with an F-rank mutant gene and become an F-rank gene warrior. Later, when they qualified for E-rank fusion, they could evolve again. And this continued, one stage after another. The gene materials required for fusion came from the blood essence of mutant beasts, combined with various reagents to form something called a gene fusion reagent. The people who crafted those reagents? Gene crafters. The original Chunfeng had always aspired to be one. The logic was simple. He was poor and had no background. If he wanted a future, he had to carve it out with a profession that matched him. If, just if, he could somehow become a gene crafter, maybe, just maybe, he'd be able to live a life worth something. Unfortunately, he failed. Becoming a gene crafter was not easy. Based on what Chunfeng knew, the first step was successfully crafting one single fusion reagent. Only then would you be recognized as a true beginner gene crafter. The success rate for a rookie? 0.1%. That meant you'd need to attempt at least 1,000 times. Even if the cheapest low-tier material cost only 1,000 yuan per unit, you'd still need a whopping 1 million yuan just to get started. Worse yet, every single attempt required full concentration, 0 mistakes allowed. Of course, there were those with freakish talent who could succeed within a few tries, and there were those who were just cursed with bad luck. People like the old Chunfeng. Back on Earth, he'd once played a gacha card game for half a year and never pulled a single rare card. That level of unluckiness? Legendary. Even if he somehow managed to succeed once, that would only mark the beginning. To improve as a gene crafter, one had to keep crafting, keep learning, and that required a ton of money. Still, if you managed to get past that grueling beginner phase, mastered the formula for a popular reagent, then congratulations. You'd be on your way from rags to riches. That was the future the original Chunfeng dreamed of. In other words, if I can become a gene crafter, I could change my entire life? Chunfeng's eyes lit up. He may not have qualified for university, and his starting point might be lower than others, but if he became a gene crafter, he could make up the difference. In fact, he wouldn't even need to go to school anymore. Short on resources? Just buy them. Genecraft, Chunfeng's heart stirred. Why did the original owner get stuck at the starting line? Besides focusing most of his time on school and training? The main reason? Bad luck. And if there was one thing Chunfeng wasn't afraid of, it was bad luck. A 0.1% success rate? Heh, Chunfeng smirked. Let's go buy some materials and give it a shot. He tidied up his tiny room and headed out to purchase some basic ingredients. It was one thing to have memories. Doing it himself was something else entirely. He needed to see with his own eyes how much of an effect his lucky aura would have on gene crafting. Power scales with ambition. He had been thrown into this strange world, and if he didn't get a clear grasp of his own strength, he'd die a dog's death. All right, then. Let's start with the wood bear gene. That was the only publicly available gene crafting formula, a rare shortcut for any beginner dreaming of becoming a gene crafter. Gene, wood bear fusion requirements. Strength, 10 points. Constitution, 5 points. Base stats provided. Strength ranged between 2 and 3. Constitution ranged between 2 and 3. Gene ability, wood bear's rage, temporarily increases strength by 10 points for 10 seconds. Cooldown 60 seconds. Suggested occupation, construction work, heavy labor. The fusion requirements were determined by the Gene Crafting Association's standard evaluation. These were the minimum attributes needed to safely fuse with a particular mutant gene. If your stats fell short, your body wouldn't be able to withstand the mutation. The result? A dangerously high chance of something going terribly wrong. As for base stats, those referred to the raw boosts you'd gain after gene fusion. And the values that ranged between 2 and 3? That had everything to do with the skill of the gene crafter. The more powerful the crafter, the better the quality of the fusion reagent, and the higher the resulting stats. Then there was the gene ability. That was the real deal. The true prize of gene fusion. After fusing with a mutant gene, the user could gain a unique power tied to the original creature. Take wood bear's rage, for example. Only those who had fused with the wood bear gene could unleash this power, temporarily boosting their strength by a massive margin for a few seconds. Immense power. Instant cooldown. That combo made the wood bear gene one of the most beloved picks among workers in heavy industries. And yet, despite its popularity, the gene only sold for 5,000 yuan. With the cost of materials running up to 4,000 yuan, there was barely any profit left after fees and expenses. Naturally, that meant most people had no interest in crafting it. To solve the growing demand-supply imbalance, the Gene Crafting Association decided to publicly release the recipe for the wood bear gene, making it the go-to starter formula for all beginner crafters. After leaving his rental complex, Chunfeng made his way to a nearby supply shop. "Little Feng, you're here!" Uncle Zhang, the store's owner, greeted him with a smile. "Looking to buy more gene materials?" "Yeah," Chunfeng nodded. "Give me 5 sets for crafting the wood bear gene." "Sure thing." Uncle Zhang quickly began gathering the supplies, but then paused for a moment. "Say, Feng, would you be interested in working here at the shop?" "Huh?" Chunfeng blinked in surprise. Uncle Zhang let out a long sigh, clearly pained. "I heard you didn't make it into university. But kid, life doesn't stop here. If you don't mind, you're welcome to work here for now. You can move on anytime you find something better." Chunfeng nearly broke into a sweat. News of his exam failure was spreading at lightning speed. It was still early in the evening. How did they already know? What he didn't realize was that in this world, high school exam results were publicly released at exactly 6 p.m. sharp. Anyone could check them online, which meant that just a few hours after the announcement, practically the entire neighborhood already knew. No one had expected that the usually top-performing Chunfeng would actually fail the university entrance exam. "Oh, little Feng, you're here too?" Auntie Lu from the neighboring shop came over with a concerned look. "You're not joining the graduation party?" "Graduation party?" Chunfeng repeated, confused. "You know, the celebration after graduation." Auntie Lu started, then noticed the glare Uncle Zhang was shooting her way. She quickly caught herself. "Oops, look at me running my mouth." "It's a get-together," Uncle Zhang explained with a sigh. "After the results are out, the class rep usually organizes a reunion for all the graduates. But it seems like your classmates? He shook his head, clearly disapproving of the fact that Chun-Feng wasn't even invited. They haven't even stepped into society yet, and they're already acting like this. Humph. Don't bother with those suck-ups, Auntie Lou chimed in, trying to cheer him up. You'll have a brighter future than any of them. Just you wait. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Without getting into university, Chun-Feng would likely drift further and further away from his former classmates. As for having a brighter future than them, that was probably just a well-meaning dream. And it was at that moment Chun-Feng truly grasped the weight of university in this world. So that's how it is. In everyone's eyes, if you don't get into college, you don't even have the qualifications to become a real gene warrior. This kind of rigid academic divide, it's even harsher than back on Earth. Still, did Chun-Feng care? A class reunion? Who the hell wanted to go to that? He had zero interest in wasting time on classmates he barely got along with. What truly mattered now was testing the power of his lucky aura. He'd already tried combining it with the wind blade ability and was still reeling from the overwhelming attack potential. But what if he used it during gene crafting? What kind of results would that produce? He couldn't wait to find out. Meanwhile, across Golden City in the luxurious Fenghua Hotel, the graduates of Class A2 had gathered to celebrate their university acceptances. As the wine flowed and congratulations were exchanged, someone suddenly asked, "Hey, where's Chun-Feng? Why isn't he here?" "Probably too embarrassed to show up," someone snorted. "Always top of the class, and then bam, flunked the exam. If I were him, I wouldn't show my face either." Ha ha, right? My mom used to nag me every day, saying, "Look at Chun-Feng, always number one despite having nothing." It drove me nuts. But now that I got into college, she didn't say a thing. Ha ha! Clearly, Chun-Feng's long-standing dominance had rubbed quite a few people the wrong way. "Hey now," Class Rep Vung Viet scolded lightly. "He was still our classmate." "Oh, come on. We're just speaking the truth," the others chuckled darkly. "Still, maybe it's for the best he didn't come." Vung Viet's tone was calm. "With how things turned out, he's probably not in the mood to celebrate. We likely won't see him again anyway. Might as well consider this goodbye." "Yeah, no kidding." One student scoffed. "If the school hadn't banned us from boosting our base stats during high school, you think that poor kid could have stayed on top? Please. Even if he had gotten into college, we'd leave him in the dust. And now? He didn't even pass." More voices chimed in, agreeing without hesitation. Vung Viet simply smiled faintly and said no more. Just then, his wrist communicator vibrated. A silent message appeared on the screen. His eyes flickered with surprise as he read it. "Chun-Feng is still alive? That guy should have already been... Come on, cheers to our class rep Vung Viet, the future gene crafter of Qingbei University," someone called out. "Haha, thanks." Vung Viet smiled, closing the holographic screen and raising his glass. Laughter and chatter filled the banquet hall. But at that very moment, inside a rundown rental room on the outskirts of town, Chun-Feng was preparing for gene crafting. Gene crafting involved 3 main steps. First, gene extraction. This required entering what was known as the dimensional state, a world of pure genes projected by mental power. Inside this space, one could isolate the exact gene fragments needed from a sample of mutated blood. Second, gene activation. Once extracted, the gene fragments had to be awakened through spiritual stimulation, combining into the specific gene structure required for synthesis. Third, gene fusion. The final step involved replicating and stabilizing the activated gene fragments within a nutrient reagent, resulting in a usable gene fusion serum. The dimensional state, huh? Chun-Feng recalled the details. The so-called dimensional state was a kind of simulated reality, an entirely mental projection where only gene data existed. Within it, gene crafters could observe and manipulate gene strands directly, free of physical limitations. "Let's give it a shot." Chun-Feng focused on the vial of wood bear blood essence before him. With careful precision, he enveloped the essence with his mental energy. In an instant, his spirit surged. Dimensional state activated. Whoosh! A radiant wave pulsed before his eyes, and a strange, illusory world unfolded. Around him floated countless shimmering threads of multicolored light. These were the gene fragments hidden within the woodbear's blood. So this is the dimensional state. I'm actually inside a pure gene world, something invisible to the naked eye. Chunfeng nodded in understanding. The first step, gene extraction, was fairly straightforward. According to the crafting guide, fusing the woodbear gene required 3 AO-type gene segments, 6 BX-type, and 4 NW-type. The instructions even included detailed diagrams, making identification easy. Out of the tens of thousands of floating gene threads, these specific segments weren't rare. With a bit of focus, Chunfeng quickly located all 13 required genes. Step 1, complete, far easier than expected. Next came Step 2, gene activation. This part seemed even simpler. All it took was channeling mental energy into the 13 extracted segments in a specific order. The crafting manual clearly detailed the activation sequence, including how much mental energy to use and the exact timing for each type of gene. AO-type genes came first, followed by BX, and then NU. In no time at all, 12 gene fragments glowed with awakening light. Only one remained unresponsive, the core of the woodbear gene. But even this final step posed no challenge. Step 2, gene activation, also complete. Nothing too hard so far, Chunfeng muttered, exhaling slowly. As long as you followed the instructions, the first 2 steps were almost foolproof, especially since the original owner of his body had attempted them many times. Thanks to those memories, Chunfeng had no trouble replicating the process. But then came the real challenge. Step 3, gene fusion. This was where the original Chunfeng had always failed. The previous 2 steps produced a complete gene blueprint, but only within the dimensional state. It was still intangible data, unable to exist in the physical world. The third and final step was the transformation of that data into a real, tangible gene serum. And that was incredibly difficult. How do I even do this? Chunfeng reviewed the process again. Fusion required surrounding the gene with mental energy and slowly injecting it into the prepared reagent bath, a translucent liquid. As the gene immersed itself, it had to replicate and distribute evenly throughout the solution, maintaining perfect balance. Only then could the gene be successfully stabilized. It sounded doable in theory, so Chunfeng decided to give it a try. Carefully, he took the activated gene and placed it into the transparent reagent solution. The moment it touched the liquid, the fluid began to turn blue. Before his eyes, the blue hue spread outward, just like ink dispersing in water as the gene began its fusion process. Soon, the entire reagent bath had turned a pure sky blue. Did I do it? A flicker of excitement sparked in Chunfeng's eyes. He slowly began withdrawing his mental power. Suddenly, boom! The fluid inside the tube exploded violently, spraying everywhere. Step 3, failure. Chunfeng analyzed what had gone wrong. It was exactly the same issue the body's original owner had faced time and time again. The gene hadn't fused evenly. And that was the trickiest part, ensuring perfect distribution. During the replication process, genes became hyperactive. At that point, the crafter had to precisely guide them into the nutrient solution, spreading them evenly and quickly. Balance was everything, but achieving that? Nearly impossible without practice. No wonder the success rate is only 0.1%. The first 2 steps could be mastered with time, but this last one was what separated amateurs from true gene crafters. Wait. A sudden thought lit up in Chunfeng's mind. What if I activate the lucky aura? Under its influence, would the genes naturally balance themselves within the solution? Without hesitation, he decided to try again. He repeated the first 2 steps smoothly, extracting and activating the necessary genes. Then came step 3, once more. Lucky aura! Activate! Whoosh! A subtle shift rippled through his senses. In the depths of his vision, reality itself seemed to shimmer slightly. Fusion! Chunfeng carefully inserted the gene into the reagent. Just like before, the transparent liquid began to turn a brilliant blue, but this time something was different. The dispersal was smooth, almost perfect, like a single drop of ink melting seamlessly into water. The gene threads flowed with astonishing harmony, fusing evenly throughout the solution. Within seconds, the entire fluid had turned a radiant, crystal-clear blue. Withdraw! Trenfang slowly retracted his mental power. The blue solution remained calm and serene, not even a ripple on its surface. Having successfully refined the gene, the path ahead seemed brighter. Trenfang's steps grew lighter, his pace quicker. But just as he neared his home, he abruptly came to a halt. At the corner ahead, cloaked in shadow, stood a faint figure. "It's been a while," the figure said softly, stepping into the dim light with a faint, familiar smile. "It's you!" Trenfang narrowed his eyes at once. This person was Vung Viet, the former class president of Class 2A in high school. Handsome, from a wealthy family, and boasting stellar academic records, he was the most popular male student during those years. And more importantly, he was the one who had caused the death of the original Trenfang. "I heard you failed your college entrance exam, so I thought I'd drop by," Vung Viet said, that same condescending smile playing on his lips. "Oh?" Trenfang chuckled faintly. "Congratulations on getting into Qingbei University." Shh! The smile on Vung Viet's face froze. The sweltering air suddenly turned cold, like frost creeping in during summer. In an instant, the atmosphere solidified. It was clear now. That look in Vung Viet's eyes was filled with murderous intent. Trenfang's words had exposed the truth. He had figured out who was behind the attack on him. Interesting. Vung Viet's smile turned thoughtful. "So you saw through it? Looks like I underestimated you. I thought you were just a bookworm. But so what if you're a bit clever? Do you really think you're stronger than me?" He sneered, taking a slow step forward with every word. "Let me enlighten you. The only reason you ever placed first in class was because you were too damn stupid. Most of us from aristocratic families awaken powerful genes later on. Like me, my gene ability might have seemed useless at first, but over time, it passively boosts my mental strength by 50%. That's the only reason you managed to outperform me a little. And your ability gene? Even if it gives you a slight edge now, it's garbage in the long run. Practically worthless. In the future, it'll be as useless as the bearwood gene. Dead weight, nothing more. Secondly, the school banned us from using external resources to enhance our base attributes in high school. We could only improve through physical training. That's the only reason you even stood a chance to keep up. Once we enter university, you'll know what a 10-fold or even a 100-fold gap really feels like." "You poor fool. Surely you understand by now. The college entrance exam, that was the last fair fight you'll ever have in your entire life." His voice grew colder with each step, his presence more oppressive. A terrifying aura radiated from Vung Viet. The arrogance of a true elite surged forth like a tidal wave. This was the real Vung Viet. Prestigious background, top student, a so-called genius of his generation. They stood in front of a row of old apartment buildings, a secluded spot where no one would notice anything. Vung Viet's aura completely overpowered Trenfang. Raised with privilege, he had always been confident, assertive. Trenfang? He was nothing more than an ant. If he could kill Trenfang once, he could do it again. But what Vung Viet didn't expect was for Trenfang to suddenly speak. "So, this is the excuse you're giving for cheating?" Vung Viet stiffened. Trenfang smirked. He'd originally thought Vung Viet had killed the original him just to secure a spot at Qingbei. But now, seeing the arrogant glint in Vung Viet's eyes, the self-satisfaction, he realized something else. Perhaps over those 3 years, the original Trenfang had cast a long shadow over Vung Viet's heart. As Vung Viet stepped closer, Trenfang suddenly reached out and gently slapped his face, twice. The crisp sound echoed in the silence. Vung Viet's eyes went wide in disbelief. He couldn't believe it. Trenfang had actually dared to lay a hand on him? "Kid, no matter how great you become in the future, remember one thing," Trenfang said calmly. "In high school, there was someone who stood above you for 3 straight years, And even in the college entrance exam, the only way you could win was by cheating. Your so-called pride, your so-called victory, all of it was built on lies. Remember that. Trenfeng, Vung Viet shoved his hand away, his entire body trembling with rage. No matter how well-mannered he pretended to be, he was still just a student. The slaps alone were humiliating enough, but what truly broke him were Trenfeng's words. They stabbed into his heart like needles, shattering every ounce of his pride. Why? He came here to show Trenfeng reality. He came here to declare his victory. He was supposed to be the one who had the last laugh. Vung Viet trembled with fury. Well done, kid. Trenfeng patted his shoulder with a chuckle. When you're famous in the future, I'll bask in the glory too. After all, I'll be the guy who stood on top of Vung Viet in high school. Has a nice ring to it, right? You bastard. Vung Viet finally snapped. Boom. He threw a punch, far beyond normal human strength, straight at Trenfeng. But just before it connected, it stopped. Trenfeng had caught it. You seem to have forgotten something, Trenfeng said, eyes glinting. Even if you're a top scorer, your base attributes are still weaker than mine. Bam! He countered with a punch that sent Vung Viet staggering backward. A cold glint flashed in Vung Viet's eyes. If he had decided to kill Trenfeng, he wouldn't come unprepared. He downed a vial of strength-enhancing serum. His power instantly spiked by 10 points. Then another, this time to boost mental focus. Again and again. In mere seconds, he had consumed 4 or 5 different enhancement serums, the kind Trenfeng had never even seen before. The aura around Vung Viet changed dramatically. Trenfeng struck again, his fist landing squarely on Vung Viet, only to recoil in pain. He looked down. His right hand was red,